Welcome back, my spooky little followers. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome to Spooky Little Things. We are going to be continuing again another story from the Great Supernatural Stories. This time it will be As It Was Written by Ulric, Daubeny, something like that. The book is done by Stefan. I still don't want to try to pronounce it. It is a very crazy last name. Just like a lot of these names in this book seem to be pretty out there. Again, we're just reading for fun. I don't own any rights to these stories. I'm just reading it for fun because I thought it'd be a fun little thing to do. The music in the background, as you'll hear, I don't own any rights to that as well. You thank YouTube for that one because YouTube's supplying it. But yeah, so let me get this thing off and we will get to reading. Again, I am not the best reader. I just do this for fun. I do apologize and in advance for messing anything up. I try my best. But yeah, so if this isn't quite your cup of tea, it's okay. I understand. Just move on to your next video. If so, let's get into it and enjoy our little book. So, this one is As It Was Written by Ulric Daubeny. Millicent could never listen to the howling of a dog with equanimity. I think I said that right. To use her own expression, it poured cold water down her back and never failed to move to take instant action. Partly from expression from the author of the outcry, but primarily to remove the cause. The landman on this particular occasion was so insistent that she halted in mid-pace and turned her head inquiringly in the direction from whence it came. The only habitation visible from the lane was Creeper Grown, and apparently unoccupied, but a reception of the uncanny call dispelled all doubts. So she hurried towards a break in the line of hedge, which marked the entrance drive. The gate, bearing in faded characters a name, the Hermitage, pushed open stiffly, creaking upon hinges long discussed. Its expostulation sorry finding an immediate echo in a further long-drawn howl. The sound was eerie when heard at fall of day. With the drive already plunged in half-light by a tangled out-hanging growth, and as the girl stepped forward, her felt increasingly uncomfortable. A curious silence had now fallen, broken only by the pattern of feminine heels upon the moss-grown gravel. Millicent began to think her errand was to be a fool's one. When a turn of path brought into view the house, and with it a half-bred collie waiting at the foot of the front steps. "What's the matter, boy?" she hailed in soothing tones, to be met with a response as strange as it was unexpected. The dog had moved towards her, tail commencing to wave and to fro, when suddenly he turned again, and with the utmost savagery bounded up the steps, and hackles bristling, tore at the woodwork of the door with fangs a-drip, pausing ever and again to take deep-drawn sniffs before giving vent to a paroxysm of frenzied scratching. Millicent, though not a coward with strange dogs, felt rather frightened. She watched a while in doubt, then moved to retrace her footsteps along the drive, but another melancholy howl arrested her. The dismal utterance, again so unexpected, caused her very flesh to creep. "My dear dog, what is the matter?" she beseeched, advancing tentatively with open hand. The collie had now left the immediate doorway and came to meet her with troubled eyes. "Want to be let in? Come on, then." The animal gave an understanding whine, so lightly tripping up the steps, and she seized the knocker and gave it a resounding tap. The sound echoed carniviously, surprising Millicent into questioning why she should be knocking at the obvious empty house, for her heap of withered leaves had accumulated against the door, which herself was scaled and dusty. Then, glancing at the dog, whose beseeching eyes asked plainly to enter, she recalled the probability of a caretaker and knocked again. A mass of leaden clouds began to engulf the setting sun, and a suddenly perceptible tremor in the still air spoke of distant thunder. The collie's tail was drooping, his whole attitude suggestive that a further howl was imminent. Meanwhile, all within kept silent. The atmosphere of heavy omen, together with the discreet aspect of the house and grounds, so acted upon her nerves, that the girl felt she should scream, if she should remain there any longer. Still hesitant, she made as if to descend the steps, when once again the behavior of the dog retained her. He was staring as if fascinating towards the door, hackles slowly rising and eyes ablaze. Millicent likewise turned, and in obedience to the impulse, bent to the level of the letter-box and peered within. In this position she remained for several seconds, every muscle tense, until a sudden relaxation left her, staggering backwards, and next moment she was tearing down the drive, face blanched and eyes luminous with horror. Fortunately the entrance gate had remained ajar, and though she projected her wild stampede meeting with no interruption, until she voluntarily slackened pace after the first staggering houses of the village had been passed. once dropped to a walk. She soon recovered self-possession, though her breath came in long, unsteady gasps, and her heart throbbed painfully. She forged ahead until the police station was at hand. Then, with an excited gesture, hailed the shirt-sleeved sergeant who was working in his garden. In a miraculously short space of time, he presented himself clad in faultless uniform, and startled her as she leant with outstretched arms against the doorpost. "Anything the matter, miss?" he queried, sharply, apprising her with searching look. She stared stupidly for a time, then replied with utter in a dry, hard whisper, "Yes, murdered at the Hermitage." The sergeant goggled at her in astonishment. He made as if to speak, but failing, swallowed awkwardly, and without comment led the way into the office. A steaming cup of tea, proffered by the sergeant's kindly wife, did much to restore Millicent's equilibrium, and after a short interval she found herself commencing to recount the adventure which unanticipated calm. Excuse me. But as the story advanced, she became increasingly flustered by the particular attitude of the sergeant. He seemed obviously distraught, and more than once she surprised him a look of introspective wonder, suggesting an incredulity of what she said, what she ate. The position grew more and more intolerable, until finally she hesitated and broke off. "Well, miss," the sergeant prompted after a short pause. His tone was almost what one would use in speaking to a child or idiot. "Well, miss, what was it you saw inside the letter box?" Making an effort, she pulled herself together, and the words continued breathlessly. "As I was about to tell, something prompted me to bend until my eyes were level with the opening, when I found myself looking into an entrance hall with staircase ascending slightly to one side. At the bottom, crumpled in a horrible position, lay the body of an old lady, dead. But it was not that which held me terror-stricken. Feet were approaching into view, stockinged feet, crippling. Softly down the carpeted stairs, step by step, they advanced, tiptoeing cautiously. Then trousered legs appeared, then a man's body, and the memory of that cruel face, and those dreadful gloating eyes. The girl paused for a moment to regain her breath. Her voice was hoarse, when once again she took up the narrative. The murderer's gaze was shifting towards the door and towards the letter box. I noticed that his hand was wet with blood. Blood trickled onto the linoleum in the hall. Then I ran." She broke off finally, and with an unsteady hand reached for the remainder of the teacup. The sergeant continued motionless, idle, fingering a pencil, and without making any attempt to move. His listless attitude astonished Millicent. To her excited fancy, the interview was assuming all the unreal horror of a nightmare. "Why do you stare like that?" she flushed impatiently. Are you not going to do something? Certainly, miss, I'll go up and see about it, if you wish, he replied civilly. But it's like this. There can have been no murder at the Hermitage because the house is empty. But I tell you, I saw people. May the caretakers? I saw the blood upon the carpet. That's another thing, miss. There's no carpet or linoleum. The place has been untended for the past 5 years. We keep the key here at the station and go up regularly to see that everything's all right. I was up there day before yesterday, and you don't believe a word I say, Melissa interposed excitedly. No, don't apologize. You think I am either mad or dreaming, but you are wrong. I saw everything exactly as I have described it. Besides, the dog knew that something was the matter, or he would never have attracted my attention. Of course, Sergeant, if you choose to neglect your duty. The man rose quickly, reaching for his helmet and a bunch of keys. I'm going up to the Hermitage at once, he announced stiffly. If you care to remain here or in the parlor, you may do so, miss. I'd like you to wait for my report. Indeed, no, I am not now afraid. I am coming with you. Expostulations would be unavailing, decided the sergeant, as without further parley, the two set off at a brisk pace. Darkness was falling swiftly as they passed together by the dislocated drive and approached the front door of the Hermitage, a sudden shadow emerging from the bushes, tattled both. But it was only the collie who trotted towards Millicent with deep grunts of welcome. Farmer Burroughs' dog, the sergeant volunteered shortly. He is always wandering around this house. They have now come to the front steps, where the girl hung back, breath catching painfully in her throat. The collie stood close by, gazing silently towards the door, to which the sergeant advanced without the slightest hesitation. Next moment it was standing open. The policeman flashed his lantern on the interior. The dog fled, yelping, down the drive, tail tightly wound between its legs, and Millicent swayed from side to side as if she were about to fall. Yet there appeared not the remotest reason for alarm. There was no indications of humanity, either living or dead. Merely an empty house, the bare boards of hall, an ascending staircase, thickly dust-covered with a slight shrub. The sergeant set about making a formal examination of the house, and then quickly closing the door behind him, presenting his negative report. Are you quite satisfied, miss? He added, good-naturedly. The girl just nodded. She felt too dizzy to speak. Millicent dispatched a warning telegram that night, and returned home next morning, looking little better for her holiday. The extraordinary vision, she knew not how to describe it, absorbed every waking thought of many days. Though scarcely a believer in the supernatural, she was not a skeptic, and came in time to form the definite conclusion that what she had seen could be nothing other than a very elaborate form of a ghost. This idea took such possession of her that in order to regain her peace of mind, she wrote a private letter to the sergeant, inquiring if in the past any deed of violence had been perpetrated at the hemorrhage. The reply came by return of post, conclusive and to the point. Madame, in answer to your inquiry, I can testify from personal knowledge that no such occurrence as you suggest has taken place at the hemorrhage since it was built. Respectfully yours, P. Smith, Sergeant. 2 years have passed, and now the memory of that dreaded experience seldom, if ever, reoccurred to Millicent. Indeed, it is doubtful whether it had crossed her mind for many weeks prior to that day, on which the chance light of an illusion paper recalled the vision in all its pristine horror. She had been travelling in an omnibus and gazing half consciously at the pictures in a newspaper, which the passenger opposite was reading. Suddenly, the reproduction of a portrait seemed to stand out in relief upon the printed page. Millicent gave vent to a suppressed cry, and for a moment felt like swooning. The reader opposite dropped his paper, glancing above it with round eyes of surprise, but the girl had already staggered to her feet, motioning for the vehicle to stop. Outside, in the fresh air, she soon recovered, feeling furiously mortified that her nerves should play her false, but presently a paper shop proved irresistible. So, blaming her stupidity, she went inside and bought the off-ending sheet. With admirable strength of mind, she kept the journal until she had reached home, and was safe within the privacy of her bedroom. But biting her lip until the blood commenced to trickle, she turned to the pictorial back page. There was no denying the likeness of her visionary murderer. It was strictly exact, and with growing perturbation she read the short description: Village Mystery. Mr. Tale, stepson of the murdered lady, who in company with a friend discovered the crime. Over the page were printed full particulars headed by 3 lines of heavy type. The Hermitage Mystery. Fingerprint clue. Police still baffled. Millicent held herself in lash for 3 whole days, and then, as no sign came of a solution to the mystery, she took her courage in both hands, and she set off for the country. Arriving at her destination, she found a pony trap at the station, which carried her along the peaceful lane towards the village. Her breathing became uneven as the heritage drew near. With some surprise, she found difficulty in recognizing the situation. Trees had been cut down, the house repainted, also the entrance gate, and she noticed that the carriage drive no longer tunneled beneath too luxuriant growth. Then, as a bend in the lane was about to shut the ill-omened house from view, the sun could be seen shining upon the drawn blinds. The heritage was now a dwelling of the dead. Arrived at the rustic constabulary, constabulary branch. She stated her business to a young policeman who admitted her to the parlor with a request that she should wait. Some time elapsed before voices sounded in the passage, and a man heavily baggaged about the neck stepped rapidly past the parlor window. That fleeting glimpse sufficed. Millicent was left, pressing both hands against her bosom and desperately fighting for her breath. Next moment the door opened and a man stood on the threshold. She turned to meet the sergeant whom she had first seen on that never-to-be-forgotten afternoon. The murderer! Why don't you arrest him? She choked, nodding her head towards the roadway. Beg pardon, miss? But that is Mr. Tail, the gentleman who found his murdered stepmother. He has just called to complain of Farmer Burrow's dog, who has bitten him badly about the throat. Ah, you do not remember that evening 2 years ago, when I came to tell you what I had seen inside the Heritage. You, of course, did not believe me. But I understand all now. It was a vision. You must admit that I described that unfortunate woman exactly as now reported in the papers. The sergeant nodded. Well, the man was the man who murdered her, I say it, for I should know the face among a million. Impossible, miss. Not less suspicion is attached to Mr. Tail. He had been away from home, and was met by a chance acquaintance in the village, who accompanied him to the house. It was those two who discovered the poor lady. But the fingerprints, have been compared? The public know the evidence as well as I do, miss. Blood-stained prints were found upon the dress and elsewhere, but having no grounds to suspect the gentleman, we naturally cannot ask for an impression of his fingers. But you must. He is the murderer, I tell you. In the vision I saw his hand was wet. An authoritative tap on the door cut short the sentence. The sergeant moved towards it with alacrity. I'm not sure what that word is. Alacrity. And next moment unheard in the detective from Scotland Yard. A few days later, the gutter press journals were black with smudgy photographs and vulgar headlines. Heritage mystery solved. The later variously ran: murder stepson, fingerprints obtained by ruse, prisoner pleads guilty, latest details. And that, my fellow people, was as it was written. So the next one also seems very lengthy. Oh, this one's the longest one yet to come. So that one's going to have to be done another night, because that one's going to be too long. And it is called The Astrologer by Dick Donovan. Nice. So we will continue reading, probably not tomorrow night, because I will be busy, but I will do it as soon as I can have a free moment to record and read another story. Hopefully it won't be too long, but it shouldn't be. But yeah, I appreciate you guys coming and listening. For those that have stayed and listened, I do apologize. Some of those words got me tonight. Like, whew. I was not expecting those big words, and some of them I'm not even sure I pronounced correctly. This is the first time I've seen some of those words, which is crazy. I love reading. You'd think I would have come across them, but these stories seem to be a little bit more written like back in the day type thing before, the slang of English. So, with that being said, I do appreciate y'all sticking with me and listening to me, regardless of me struggling here and there. But, yeah, we'll continue the stories another night, hopefully here soon, and get the next story going. Again, if you enjoyed this, thumbs up if you'd like. Please subscribe if you want to keep hearing more of the stories and keeping up with everything. Also, don't forget to go check out the merch store. Like I said, I have a lot of new designs being done up and will be up hopefully within the next few days. Yeah, so again, thank you so much for coming and reading with me. I do appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you guys on the next video. Bye!